All right, welcome in everybody. Thank you guys for joining us on another live stream for the Mock Draft Mondays. We got another one starting here in about 13 minutes. It's going to be a good time. My name is Jared Palmgren. I am the host of the Chasing the Natty podcast, as well as the Chasing the Natty YouTube channel. And today I don't have Xavier with me. Xavier is off doing some family business. He's having a good time. But to get in his place, I brought along Mr. Kevin Brown. Mr. Kevin Brown, would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
What's going on, folks? How's everybody doing tonight? Jared had to call on the B team tonight since Xavier is having a little family dinner, which I don't blame him. If mom and dad was going to cook me dinner tonight, I'd probably be there too. So, no, man, I appreciate you having me on. I've been following along with these. I participated in several, and it's good to be on here chatting it up with you.
Oh yeah, it's been a good time. What did I do? Apparently I changed the league configuration. I'm not entirely sure. So we got about 15 minutes here before the draft started. So you and I kind of wanted to talk about some stuff before the draft started. And first and foremost, there's been kind of some debate going on among the CFF experts regarding some of these top running back prospects for this upcoming year, specifically the top three, who seem to be like the designated top three. Sorry, Sincere McCormick, love you, you're in my heart, but you're kind of the clear number four. And then you have Bijan Robinson, Muhammad Ibrahim, and Breece Hall as your kind of top three running backs. I threw some shade a little bit Bijan Robinson's way not too long ago. I think a lot of people took a little bit more personal than I meant it to. I love Bijan. He's my number three back for this upcoming year, but I'm not taking him ahead of Breece Hall or Muhammad Ibrahim. But Kevin, you kind of DNB, you had a kind of an interesting take, and you say that Breece Hall is not the RB1. Who are you taking as your RB1? Like, what's your case for your player being the RB1?
So I've gotten over the past couple of weeks, the more and more I look at this, the more and more I'm drafting, the way I'm looking at the way teams are stacking out. And look, let's not hear what I'm not saying kind of thing. I'm not saying that anything outside those top four running backs, when you got Sincere McCormick, Bijan, Muhammad Ibrahim, and Breece Hall, they're my top four just the same. But I've really gotten into the mindset to where I'm going to me personally, if I'm in a spot, I'm taking Muhammad Ibrahim over Breece Hall. And, you know, it's just one of those things to where when I look back at his game log, I think the CFF community as a whole, and I'm not meaning to speak for anybody, and put any words in anybody else's mouth, but I think we're kind of forgetting about the teams that didn't play a full season last year. So, most specifically the Big Ten and the Pac-12 with, guys like Muhammad Ibrahim, Breece Hall, or not Breece Hall, but Austin Jones and those kind of guys. And we're talking about guys that had major volume. We're talking 25 plus carries almost every week for Muhammad Ibrahim, a lot of 4 touchdown games. And this was in games that they were ahead in. This were in games that they were losing in. It didn't matter. Muhammad Ibrahim was getting the rock, and he was getting the rock a lot. He had 1,076 yards in 7 games last year. And like I said, even though they were still losing, he had 20-plus touches in their 4 losses. He is 26 carries, 33 carries, 41 carries in a loss in overtime, and then another game with 26 carries. Averaged 153 yards a game, 28 carries per game. If you were to extrapolate that out, he's actually – it wouldn't even be a conversation of who is the number one running back going into this year. It would be Muhammad Ibrahim if he played all 12 games. But the fact that Breece Hall played all 12 games and he's got that nice 1,600 rushing yards and 20-plus touchdowns sitting next to his name last year, it's really easy for most people to say, oh, yeah, that's the no-brainer, number one running back off the board. It's really easy to forget how good Muhammad Ibrahim was because, one, Minnesota didn't have hardly any hype behind him last year like they did the year before. And then, 2, they only played 7 games as to where Breece Hall played 12 and 13 games. So it's just, Muhammad Ibrahim is going to move up to my number one running back, come real draft season, which we're right here in the middle of all of it. So, if I'm at the number 2 pick or 3 pick and I'm on the clock and I got Muhammad and Breece there, I'm definitely going to go Muhammad going forward.
I mean, Kevin, I'm for the most part actually on board with you. I still have Breece as my number 1 overall, but in terms of and I know you hate this word, but it's called value. And to me, Muhammad Ibrahim is going to be one of the more valuable running backs. He's a steal if you get him anywhere past the number 4 pick, in my opinion. Like, I've been able to grab Mohamed Ibrahim at like the 9th pick and 8th pick. Like, Breece Hall is always out of there in like the top two or three picks. I like Breece Hall. I would probably do the same thing. I'd probably take him in those top 3 picks as well. But he is the least likely out of those two to fall out of that top 3 range. And to me, Breece Hall and Mohamed Ibrahim are the 1A, 1B of this class. I still have Breece Hall ahead of him a little bit. I think those are your top 2 backs, clear as day. Bijan, I know there's a case that his upside is higher than either of those two, and I understand that argument very well. But again, if you're talking about just safety combined with upside, Ibrahim and Breece are your top 2 guys. But again, Ibrahim, I love grabbing him in drafts. Usually, like in the later rounds or in the latter half of the first.
You can't go wrong.
You can't. This dude was on pace for 345 carries last year. Like, name me another running back who was on pace for that. Like, Breece Hall, I like Breece Hall because I think he'll be able to break off more runs than Ibrahim will probably do in this upcoming year. I love the upside of Breece Hall in terms of not only just going into this year, but going forward in talent and everything, like in those dynasty and C2C drafts and everything, Devi and C2C. Breece Hall is going really early for a reason. Dude's going to be absolutely one of the top 2 running backs off the board next year. He's going to be fantastic. But again, Ibrahim, like, I usually try to go for a wide receiver in the latter half of the first round. That's usually just kind of been my strategy if that's where my pick falls. But if Ibrahim's still there for me, there's no brainer. No brainer. Oh, yeah, I'm taking him every single time.
No, I mean, Ibrahim shouldn't be getting out of the top 4 picks. So for me, when it comes to our derby, which I'll be damned, did we do that Thursday?
No. We had to postpone it.
Man, I missed that one. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I didn't miss it. But anyway, I mean, and this is, hopefully it's not, showing my hand too much. But if it's up to me, I want to be at that 4 or 5 pick, preferably the 4 pick, so I know for sure that I'm not going to be picking Sincere McCormick at the 5 spot. But typically you got a lot of people that like going quarterback early, especially the Matt Corrals, the Rattlers, that kind of stuff. So really, anywhere in that 6 and 7 range, you got to assume 1 wide receiver is going and at least 1 quarterback's going in that top 6 or 7 picks.
I would agree.
That's kind of been the status quo so far. Then after that, you got your picks. But for me, it's and which me and you've talked quite a bit on my take on quarterbacks. I'm punting quarterback this year.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not at the 101 to take Malik Willis, I like Dustin Crum. I don't have any problem with him, but I would much rather take one of those top tier wide receivers or running backs in that end of the first, top of the second, maybe, and still in the 3rd round. I totally get the allure to having Dustin Crum, especially after those first 3 weeks are gone. He's going to dominate.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a hard time sinking a high draft capital pick into quarterbacks that don't really have a lot of rushing upside. Rattler doesn't have much. Matt Corral doesn't have a ton. He'll run a little bit, but he's not going to have 700-800 rushing yards.
No, he won't. He won't hit 700. He'll have a steady floor of 600.
I don't want a quarterback that's going to give me 30 rushing yards a game. If I'm going to draft a quarterback in the first couple rounds, I want a quarterback that's got the upside of having 125 and 2 touchdowns that week.
Mm-hmm.
The Johnny Manziels, the Lamar Jacksons, those kind of guys, right? We drafting yet? We're not ready to draft.
We got 4 minutes left until the draft, and we're in the latter half of the first round anyway. So if we see anything weird, I'll say something. But we can keep talking about this. In terms of like top tier quarterbacks, I'm mostly with you. I do think there's massive value at quarterback later in the draft. You can absolutely tell Kevin this upcoming Thursday. All right.
Gotcha. Thanks, John.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Malik Willis, again, I agree. 101. Can't go wrong there with Malik Willis. I am letting everybody else take Spencer Rattler this upcoming year because he is not Kyler Murray. He is not Baker Mayfield. He is not Jalen Hurts. He does not have that rushing upside to warrant how high he's going. As much as I love Oklahoma quarterback in college fantasy and everything, he's not the same value as these past Oklahoma quarterbacks have been. I actually do like Matt Corral mostly because I really think Ole Miss is going to have just a high-flying offense this upcoming year. And he's going to score, he'll throw 5 interceptions in a game, but then he'll throw 6 touchdowns to somehow back it up. The scoring opportunities with Matt Corral, I think, are going to warrant his high draft ceiling. Dustin Crum, I do love the Crum drum. Dude is fantastic, but he is.
I have heard you beating on the drum awfully hard. That's why I wanted to make sure I brought his name up because
no, and I love him, but but I understand again, those first 3 weeks are rough. And so, maybe passing on him in that later first round is fine. But, man, if I can grab him in that early second round, after I've already grabbed the top-tier wide receiver or running back, oh, man, I feel so good about myself. I feel so good.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here looking at Matt Corral's game log from last year.
Mm-hmm.
The passing numbers are fantastic. I mean, he dominated last year there. But when you're looking at his rushing attempts, he was a steady, 12 to 15 carries a game kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Maybe 10 to 13. But, you got 13 for 50 and no scores, 13 for 51, no scores, 13 for 40, no scores, 12 for 29, no scores. He had 2 games to where he really put up some numbers. He had 10 for 88 and 2 touchdowns against Auburn. But he was really, really low on his passing volume. He only had 27 attempts. He was 16 for 27 for 154 and 1 touchdown. Mm-hmm. And then he had the LSU game where he just beat the brakes off of them. They lost the game, but he threw for 250 and 3. Then he rushed for 158 and 1. Now outside of that 158-yard game, that's a nice bump. The 5 points. The 4 or 5 points you get, it gives you a little bit of a safer floor. But I understand why people draft Corral where they're drafting, because in college fantasy football, if you have one of those top tier quarterbacks, they're liable to have a 40 or 50 point week, just like that, right? And then at that point, you are way, way ahead of your opponent. You're looking at just totally smoking them whenever it comes, for the week, a week winning type of game. And so I totally understand why people draft him where they're drafting these top tier quarterbacks at. Same with Rattler. If Rattler comes out and throws for 325 yards and 4 touchdowns, nobody's going to be surprised.
Here's my question on this, and I guess maybe you can help me figure this out and everything. But Sam Howell, if I'm looking at my ADP sheet here, which by the way is still on sale if people want access to that. If I'm looking at my ADP sheet.
And hold on, before you go any further, Jared, I just want to give you a shout out on that ADP sheet. It is a fantastic tool. I've bought it. I've used it multiple drafts. I've already used it this draft to set up my queue. For anybody out there that especially people that are new to CFF, it's hard to understand who all these people are compared to what you're used to with the NFL. There's only 32 teams in the NFL. You only got a handful of running backs, a handful of wide receivers, blah, blah, blah. But in CFF, you got 130 teams, and you got a boatload of running backs, a boatload of wide receivers. It's really hard to keep all the players straight whenever it comes to who's doing what and where. So for the folks that are new, especially new, I would highly recommend spending just a little bit of money, getting this on your computer and following it, just like it's the gospel.
Oh yeah, Kevin. I appreciate you giving that shout out and everything. And again, this is for new and old CFF players and everything. It's mostly just a tool for you to understand where people's values are at this upcoming year. I've said this multiple times on my show. I'll say it again. The 2 best things you can do going into your leagues this year, especially your drafts, is being prepared and being flexible. This ADP sheet helps you be prepared, understand where players are going, where your typical values will find them. Being flexible, you hop into mock drafts just like this one, gives you plenty of experience on how to change your draft strategy in the middle of the draft. But anyway, Malik Willis, first player off the board. Wow, shocker. Anyway, so the question I was going to ask before we gave a little plug on the ADP sheet there was, so you're talking about the reason why Matt Corral, Spencer Rattler, these guys are going in that top tier is because they can get you those 40, 50 point weeks. So then riddle me this, why is Sam Howell going almost an entire round later? That is a dude that can absolutely get you a 40, 50 point week. He did it last year multiple times.
So look, I can tell you why it does for me.
Okay.
And the reason being it's 100% due to the fact that when you lose 4 players to the NFL off a team like North Carolina that probably has had a hard time putting 4 players in the NFL the past 4 years, there's a lot of talent not there anymore, right? Now, it doesn't mean shout out to Mac Brown. He's been recruiting like a bat out of hell, man. He's been killing it, recruiting over the past couple of years.
Oh yeah.
But whenever you're like, it's hard to get past what North Carolina used to be. It's hard to get past that. They used to be this, 6-6, 5-7 type team. And, just because they've had a couple good weeks or a couple good years, it's hard to get past it. I know for me, like Sam Howell, there's not a ton of rushing upside there to go along with anything. And then you're just kind of left hoping that these wide receivers coming up can hit the same way that the guys did last year, right? And if they don't, then Sam Howell's going to be you're going to pick Sam Howell way too high.
No, I think that's very fair. Michael H asks in the chat, it says, any worry with Corral after losing Elijah Moore? I'll answer mine personally. Dude, Ole Miss has stacked up on wide receivers, like through the transfer portal and everything. I think they're going to be just fine. They got Jalen Knox out of Missouri. They got Ja'Cour Pearson coming in from Western Kentucky. I think they're going to be fine there. That doesn't even mention the guys they already have. All right, so I'm up to pick here. I'll make my pick real quick. Again, Dustin Crum is the highest person on my board here, but I've seen him drop into that second round a little bit too often, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll my dice there, and I know I'm not going to get Keyshawn Butte in that second round, so I'm going to go ahead and grab him here. Kevin, we'll have you go ahead and make your pick here.
All right, so we've had Keyshawn Butte and David Bell coming off the board, and I'm with you. I'm toward the end of the first round. I'm looking for the most part at wide receiver to see who's out there, and after those two wide receivers are gone, I'm gonna transition back over to running backs. Get these guys pulled up here. Got another 30 seconds left, so we got a little time.
But, Michael, the short answer for that is no, I'm not worried. If there's going to be worry with Matt Corral this year, it's not going to be because of the receivers. You took Tank Bigsby. Alrighty. It's been a while since I've seen Tank Bigsby go that high. What you thinking about him?
And this is the first time I've taken Tank in a while. And what I'm looking at is the fact that it looks like he's going to be the only guy in town. You got to hope the Auburn offense moves a little bit better with Brian Harsin in town. So I'm gonna give her a shot right there, and I'm back up with Austin and Spiller gone, and I'm gonna go kind of on brand here. This is my second round pick in almost every draft I've been in.
I've noticed that
the past 4 or 5 has been Austin Jones, and I think this is another guy that's really getting deemed for the fact that the Pac-12 didn't play a full season last year. If you go back and you look at his game logs and what he was able to accomplish, if you include his 9 rushing attempts for 9-yard gain against Colorado early in the season, he still averaged just shy of 100 yards. And let's see, in my notes here, I got, if I really believe that if the Pac-12 played all 12 games, he'd be a first-round running back, no question about it. Any running back that you can consistently get 20 to 25 carries every single week, locked in 120, 125 yards, and he sees all the goal line work, it's not a discussion of if he should be drafted in the first round. It's just when he should be drafted in the first round. So Austin Jones will likely continue to be one of my top 2 picks throughout the rest of the season.
I believe it. And I believe it's CFF Insiders that his rankings are a bit old. I think they last updated them in January, but it still gives you an idea of just the upside this guy has. He had Austin Jones ranked at number 2 in his first rankings coming out of last season and everything. So he clearly sees kind of the same thing you see and everything, where if Austin Jones played that entire season, he likely would be in this top 12 running back conversation.
And look, man, I totally get it. It's hard for me to sit there and look and think, yeah, I'm going to go with this guy, because it's a different thought process this year. Last year was such a weird, screwed up year where everything was all over the place. It was tough for me, especially on the wide receiver front, to come in and really buckle down and get a set of rankings put up for wide receivers. I don't prefer to rank wide receivers anyway. That's the biggest reason why I have your ADP tool. But it was tough, man, because you go through and you're looking at stats, and you got to remember, well, damn, these 3 or 4 conferences, they only played 6 or 7 games, so I got to take that into account. And you really got to take a step back and look at that before you're drafting, because I will pound on the desk, if Austin Jones would have played 12 games last year, it wouldn't even be a discussion. He'd be one of the top 5 backs probably. I think I got him at 9 for me personally, and really, he probably should be higher for me. But again, I'm doing the same thing. I kind of give him a little bit of a knock because he doesn't have the same body of work as these other guys do.
No, again, you know me. That's my whole thing with Bijan and everything. Where I'm like, listen, I love the talent. I love the opportunity he's going to be getting this year and everything. But again, it has to be underneath Muhammad and Brees there because again, I just haven't seen him do the full season. I haven't seen him be that guy for an entire season. So like, yeah, he's still my number 3 back and everything. But at the end of the day, I have to go with the guys who have done it before and everything. Talk about some of the other guys that have gone off here. Desmond Ridder in the second round is a little bit of a reach for me there. Jalen Tolbert was a guy I was actually highly considering over Dustin Crum because part of me wanted just to see how far Dustin Crum would fall.
I think you'd be surprised. I think you'd go a lot further than what you think you would.
I think so as well. And now Xavier said in the chat, he's like, I can never let anybody have a share of Crum, can I? I'm like, nope. If he's in the second round, I'm grabbing him. That's plain and simple for me. Let's see, Kyron Williams. That's a good pick right there. There we go. Sam Howell pretty much going right where he's always been going, right there at the end of the second round. A little bit later than everybody else. I'm trying to think. There's a lot. This big wide receiver run has kind of been the thing I've been pointing to people all year and everything. If you don't grab a wide receiver in these first 2 rounds and everything, it dries up so quickly in terms of the proven guys coming back. You just got to be so careful. If you don't take a wide receiver in those first 2 rounds, you're really rolling the dice.
Yeah, and when coming up here in a minute, we'll talk a little bit more about my next 2 picks. But that's probably where I'm looking at going at. Obviously, going running back in the first 2 rounds. I'm probably looking at the wide receiver and try to at least get my 2 core wide receivers down, and then after that, for me, I'm shooting for high upside, and I'll pick up quarterbacks in the double digit rounds. That's kind of been my thought process the entire time. So for you, Jared, what is your quote unquote perfect draft strategy for you this year with the way that the players are looking?
I mean, I like the values that for running back and everything I can get, and the like usually the 3rd, 4th round is usually when I feel the most comfortable trying to find a running back to kind of start my team off with. It's really, if I don't grab, like I said, if I don't grab wide receiver early, I start feeling naked. I start feeling very uncomfortable because once I start looking at the guys later, I'm just like, okay, these are not nearly as good as options I could have drafted a round or 2 ago. And I look at the running backs and quarterbacks and I'm like, okay, these guys are as good as I could have gotten.
Yep.
Let's see. Chris Rodriguez just went off the board. He was the guy I was eyeing here because I don't have my running back yet. And I'm kind of looking ahead and everything. And, this is one of those moments where you have to kind of look at the guys you have available and say, you got to look at the guys that are available. And even though I need a running back right now, I'm probably just going to go ahead and grab my highest rated guy, or one of my highest rated guys, because I'm looking ahead. Again, I don't have any running backs with Cameron Peoples, and I could probably grab him on this next turn if I really am feeling like it. But I'm going to go ahead and grab my second wide receiver here. I'll take Jalen Cropper, a guy who's going to monopolize the receiving game in Fresno State. I feel like that is going to be, I feel like him as a wide receiver too is going to be infinitely more valuable than me trying to reach up here for Cameron Peoples or like a Tyler Goodson or a Jarek Broussard. And then somebody else taking him immediately afterwards. So what are you going to do here, Kevin?
Yeah, that's actually who I was going with Jaylen Cropper. So I'll go with my next guy. It was going to be Chris Olave. Jaylen Cropper was definitely where I was going, at that spot. And I was going to go Cropper and Olave back to back there, or almost back to back. And that's something that I really do like about having the pick pretty close to the turn, is the fact that I can group my positions together, and I can go hard on running backs, and then I can in the next round I can go hard on wide receivers, and then and then I can kind of balance it out with a running back, wide receiver until I start looking at the tight end spot and I start looking at the quarterback spot. But that's Garrett Wilson right off right there. So let me ask you a question: which one do you prefer between Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave? Me personally, Garrett Wilson is going to be the safer pick with the more catches, the more PPR upside. And then on the other side of the ball, Chris Olave, at least in years past with Justin Field, he's been the field stretcher. He's been the guy catching those 50-yard touchdowns and that kind of stuff. So what's your thoughts on those two?
So again, like pretty much everybody else, I have those two ranked right next to each other. It's going to be so hard to determine who's going to be that guy each week. I will say the one thing that always kind of brings me back to Chris Olave is the fact that he came back. There is every reason for him to leave last year, go off to the NFL draft. It's my pick here real quick, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab Cameron Peoples here as my first running back off the board. I do have Eric Gray here, but honestly, these rankings are a little bit old. I actually knocked Eric Gray with some of the discussion going around him recently. I knocked him down just a little bit. We can discuss that later. But anyway, as I was saying, Chris Olave, the fact that he came back to me says a lot. I do believe he easily would have been a possible first round, definitely second round wide receiver in the NFL draft this year. I have no reason to doubt that. And so I don't believe he comes back if he wasn't promised that you're not going to be overtaken by some of these younger guys, because that's a huge risk for him to come back. Because like you got guys like Garrett Wilson, you got guys like Smith and Jigba, you got these young guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Julian Fleming and Emeka Egbuka that could easily overtake him if he's not careful. So I believe he's coming back, and I believe he's coming back with a promise of having a great workload this upcoming year.
Good. I like the way you're thinking right there. That's kind of my thought process. Is I think both Wilson and Olave, I think they're both going to eat. I mean, they've been able to sustain two wide receivers the past couple of years. I think Garrett Wilson is the nice safety blanket that's going to stay close to the line of scrimmage. Olave is going to be a little deeper down the field. And as long as CJ Stroud can keep the running game going the way that they have been in the past, that's going to open up the play action pass for him, which is where Olave has just lived. You know,
I agree.
Those deep post routes, those deep corner routes and fade routes. You know, it's I've really enjoyed watching both of them play. And to be totally honest with you, if I were a little bit smarter, I would have probably went a different player there instead of Olave, and then taken whichever one was left after that pick, because I really don't have any issue with either one of them. But with that all being said, whenever it come back around to me, Jamir Gibbs in the fourth round. Let me ask you a question on Jamir Gibbs and see kind of feel where you're at there, because I had a hard time with Jamir Gibbs at first. I'm starting to really come around, mostly because of how bad Georgia Tech has been. You know, I've really struggled with having anybody from Georgia Tech on the team. But when I'm looking at his game log here, and he's got a guaranteed reception workload, especially when they're getting beat.
I agree.
4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. He's getting 40, 50, 60 receiving yards about every week. And if he can turn any of that into a touchdown, that's a huge week.
But that's the if. That's
the big thing. Yeah.
That's where I draw the line on Jamir Gibbs. I'm with you. I'm a Georgia fan. I'm supposed to hate Tech with all my being and everything. You can't look at Jamir Gibbs and then tell me that he's not a talented player. Dude is probably going to be one of the best backs going off to the NFL in a couple of years. Dude is absolutely electric when he is given the ball in the field. Easily could be the best player on Georgia Tech's roster. The problem is I don't see them getting a ton of scoring opportunities. Now, again, they could really turn this around this upcoming year. Like Jeff Collins, I've heard a lot of good things from behind the scenes and everything telling me that the players are buying into Jeff Collins' vision, and that should tell you a lot about where that program is probably headed. They're recruiting the city of Atlanta very well from what I've been hearing, and they're really buying into that brand that Georgia Tech needs to represent Atlanta, not just some kind of smart school, which I think is a brilliant strategy on their part. Regardless of all that and everything, I like Jamir Gibbs, but again, the scoring opportunities probably was going to keep me off of him. Now, again, fourth round, I'm willing to take a shot on him here. Like fourth round, fifth round, I do think there's some value here. That
was my next question: is where is it? Are you clearly comfortable with taking a guy?
I'd say fifth round, and okay. only if I already have my first running back. Like he's definitely one of those guys where he's like, I don't want to say this guy's name because I don't want this person off the board, because if this person is still available here, I mean fifth. He just went off the board. Okay, Eric Gray. I do love the talent of Eric Gray, and I think it was a perfect transfer moving over from Tennessee over to Oklahoma. I think he's going to get great work over there. I think he's going to be one of the most electric people in that offense this upcoming year. He's going to give them a different dynamic than they've really been used to. But I'm not entirely sure about how that carry breakdown is that carry load breakdown is going to work between him and Brooks and whatever talented running backs they have behind him. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. And so I'm a little bit hesitant, and I love grabbing him now as a second running back to where if he doesn't work out, he's not the guy I'm relying on going into the season, if that makes any sense.
Sure. No, I got you. I totally understand. It's there. CFF Nate. I've reached out to him personally because I am a big Kennedy Brooks fan. I was all on board, especially after Trey Sermon left town and then he ended up opting out for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But according to CFF Nate, he has definitely made it very clear, and he's a big Oklahoma guy, and he knows the right questions to ask the right people in that circle, and he has told me personally, in just Twitter messages that Eric Gray has been by far the best running back inside the running back room for Oklahoma, and it's not even remotely close.
Wow.
So it's hard for me to want to invest too much in Kennedy Brooks, and I get it. Eric Gray would have been. I was taking him with one of my next 2 picks if he was there. If he got past you, which it doesn't sound like what it was. No,
he wouldn't get past me, and I'm looking at the chat. Xavier was eyeing him as well, so Eric Gray was going in this round, and none of us were getting him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so there goes your boy DeMonte Tuggle. He's gone, so that's got to bum you out a little bit.
Bumming me out a little bit, but honestly, there's a quarterback here that I think a lot of people are forgetting about because he plays on what's considered a bad team, even though honestly Virginia's not that bad of a team. Brennan Armstrong, dude. People were buzzing over Bryce Perkins a couple of years ago, and Brennan Armstrong comes on last year to kind of take over for him and just picks up right where Bryce Perkins stopped. Dude has an incredible rushing upside. It's very safe floor. And to pair him here with Dustin Crum, I think is honestly a dream come true for me. I think he will provide me kind of a safe option for those weeks that Dustin Crum is going to be facing some of those Power 5 competition and everything. I think grabbing him in the 5th round here, a guy that could easily get upwards of 30, 40 points every single week, I think is a great option for me to grab here.
Yeah,
and you just grabbed the other guy I was considering.
I'm going the same way. It was when you got to talking about the quarterbacks, I thought, damn, you're about to snipe me again right in front of where I was looking to go. I typically like to hold off on quarterbacks. I don't love any of the wide receivers that are out there right now. I've already got 3 running backs, so it's time to start looking at trying to see who's available at quarterback. Dorian Thompson Robinson, he's one of the few quarterbacks that admittedly that I hated even the thought of having this guy on my team last year.
Mm-hmm.
But, looking back, it's starting to look like, and I hate to say it too loud, because I don't want anybody to really hear me, but it's really starting to look like they're starting to figure it out on offense over at UCLA. And I'm going to go with Jaden Walley, the number 1 wide receiver in the Mississippi State air raid offense as my 2nd wide receiver. If I'm going to wait this long on wide receivers, I definitely want a wide receiver that's not just a number 1, but just a number 1 in a high-powered, not necessarily a high-powered offense, a high-volume offense. I don't expect Mississippi State to be very good this year, but there's one thing that's been pretty rock solid with Mike Leach is there's always a pretty decent bump from year 1 to year 2.
True.
Especially with their wide receivers. So that's somebody that I'm willing to roll the dice on.
Well, you typically see Leach kind of roll, in year 1, he kind of rolls with what he has. And then by year 2, he has a better idea of who's on his roster and everything. He has a better idea of who he'll be able to trust at that QB1, which honestly is the reason why I'm not trusting Will Rogers this year. I've heard a lot of stuff coming out of camp that Leach has not been happy with the way Rogers has been progressing. And you're seeing a lot more talk about maybe Jack Abraham, a senior, coming in from Southern Mississippi, kind of taking over that offense for a year possibly.
And that guy can sling it down there,
and
too.
He sure can.
He played really well down there where he was at. He played strong. I have no issue with that at all.
I just want to point out a couple of values or a couple of players here that I felt like were pretty strong values here in the 6th round. Xavier Valade, I had a double take when I looked at my queue and I saw that he was still there. That is a dude that is going to be stuffed like a Thanksgiving turkey with the amount of carries that he'll be getting this upcoming year on that Wyoming offense.
You go back and listen to any of our Campus to Campus episodes. I'm a pretty big Xavier Valade fan. Had I not already had 3 running backs and only 1 wide receivers, I would have absolutely taken him in that spot right there. So that's a solid pick on your side.
I feel a lot more comfortable in my running back room now a little bit because I got Cameron Peoples in the 4th round and everything. I was starting to get a little scared. I'm like, all these running backs going off the board. I'm going to get left behind here. And then I just happened to look and Xavier Valade still here in the sixth round. I'm like, I'll scoop that up real quick. Solidify my running back room a little bit. Travell Harris was another guy I was kind of looking at here. I love Travell Harris. Dude could easily be he probably will be the number one wide receiver at Washington State this upcoming year. I like his talent a lot. Great breakout last year. I think he's a great value here around the second round. I usually like seeing him paired with Justin Hall. I've seen a couple people grab them on turns and stuff like that. I don't know why. I just love that duo. Preston Hutchinson going where he belongs, in my opinion. Or like, I don't know. Were you watching last week, Kevin, when he went in the 10th round?
Yeah, I was on there. I had fully committed to punting on QB, and I was going to wait until the teen rounds before I took him. So I sat there and watched him for a long time.
I
took him in round 10, I think is what it was.
I took him in round 10 as my third QB, and I typically don't take my third QB that early, but I was like, there's no reason for him to still be on the board here. So I'm glad he went where he's supposed to here in the 6th round. Deuce Vaughn, very good high upside pick. Derek King here in the 6th round. I think that's pretty much fair for him in terms of if you want to balance out the injury concerns. I think 6th round, grabbing him not as your first QB, I think is a great place to grab him. Keon Slovis is gone a little bit higher this time than he typically has in the last couple of drafts. He's kind of dropped down to round 8 to 10 recently. Are you kind of agreeing with that, Kevin?
No, not at all. Especially after how much work they put in the transfer portal of the wide receiver room. Like I'm starting to get out on the wide receivers unless I'm going to. Especially best ball. Best ball when it comes to the USC wide receivers, I'm in on the USC wide receivers. But when it comes to season long, Drake London has locked himself up as the number one guy. Everybody seems pretty, consensus that he's the guy. But he's got so much talent around him at the wide receiver position. If he didn't go here, he was going at in round 7, pick 11 for sure. I was absolutely going to take him as my second quarterback. Just because if they're going to run the air raid offense and they've got 5-6 players deep of legitimate good players at wide receiver, I don't see how he doesn't just tear apart defenses out there in the Pac-12. He may struggle against, the Oregons and stuff like that, but I know people are kind of out on him, but I'm looking at it from a volume standpoint. There's going to be so much passing volume there that it's going to be hard for him to not be a 300-plus passing yard quarterback every single week. I think you just got to hope they get in the end zone.
As somebody who's a little bit I'm not a fan of Keon Slovis from a talent perspective at all. I think people give him way too much credit because he beat out JT Daniels. I'm like, dude beat out a guy who tore his ACL, and then the coach told that, hey, this guy's all right, so we're just going to keep rolling with him. That's who he beat out. On top of that, I agree with you. The talent at receiver is what's keeping the value of Keon Slovis up. Because if you look at how far or his average depth of target is, he doesn't.
No, what is that?
Dude, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's less than 10 yards on the field. They do not throw the ball very far down the field at all. I was shocked looking at some of the USC wide receivers when I was doing research for Taj Washington, because Taj Washington. My whole thing earlier this offseason when he first transferred there before all these other guys transferred there as well, I was like, Taj Washington could easily change this offense into a bit more of a field-stretching offense because guys like Tyler Vaughns, guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown saw 50% of their targets shorter than 10 yards down the field. And I was like, excuse me? Clearly this is an offense that relies on the talent of the receivers after the catch, which I don't blame. That's what Bama did for a while when they had Jerry, Jeudy, Ruggs, Waddle, and Devontae Smith all on the same team. Yeah. That slant every single time, it was killer.
You can't stop everybody. That's the whole. That's the whole point. You can't stop both London and Taj Washington and Jake Smith being on the field. Everybody is just assuming Jake Smith's going to step in up there and be the number 5, number 6 wide receiver. And I think people have. They forget because he hasn't blown up yet that this was one of the elite wide receivers coming out of high school. He was a 1,000-yard receiver, 1,000-yard rusher in high school, and the kid's got some talent. Now whether or not he can fit in out there, I don't understand the transfer out there. Hey Jared, it's your pick, so I'm gonna let you go and talk about this one through here.
So I actually was eyeing several running backs here, and 3 out of the 4 that I was eyeing here went off the board. I was looking at Tyler Goodson here, Rachaad White and Ty Chandler were all 3 running backs that I was kind of considering here. Rachaad White easily could be a top 12 running back this upcoming year if the carries between him and Trey Young favor his way. Dude was absolutely explosive last year. I liked what I saw of him. But I'm going to go ahead and take a guy. This is my flex. So I'm going to take kind of a higher upside guy here because this is going to be like your guy that you kind of, trade in and out of your lineup. I could go wide receiver here, and I got a couple here that I'm kind of eyeing. But you're talking – I only got 15 seconds. I'm just going to go ahead and take him. But here I am talking my head off. But Chris Smith –
that's a good pick right there.
Again – you got carries vacated by Regis, you got carries vacated by Mitchell, and you got Chris Smith here, a guy who is more explosive than either of them, about to inherit a good majority of the carries. I don't see how he's not one of the highest upside picks you could grab here in the 7th round.
Yeah, and I'm gonna reach up and I'm gonna grab another quarterback here.
Mr. Zero QB grabbing 2 quarterbacks in the top 7 rounds.
And what it has to do with is the fact I'm gonna take Bailey Zapp. And then as long as the Iowa dude doesn't ruin my plan, I'm gonna reach back around and I'm gonna grab my 3rd wide receiver.
And that's Mr. Jared Stearns, I bet.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna stack them up together. Like I said, I really like the way my running backs and my 3 running backs are right now. Cole Turner was one coming up, man. That's a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bummer. I was definitely looking at Cole Turner, and my thoughts on Cole Turner. I am absolutely 100% totally fine with overpaying for him. Oh, he got me. He's listening.
He's listening.
Okay. I'm glad it's a mock. That would have stung me a little bit. All right, so now that we're here, I got to pivot. We got to stay water and kind of flow with the draft here. So now I'm going to look and see who I got in my queue and see who's all available there. So let's see. So I'm actually going to go with Alabama starting running back. I have a hard time believing as my 4th running back. I've got a hard time believing that Nick Saban is just going to hand the keys over to a younger person that's not been with the team near as long as Robinson has until Robinson gives him a reason to. And if he doesn't give him a reason to within those first couple of weeks, I don't think that he'll give up the role at all. And I think that he's going to be a hell of a replacement for Najee Harris. Maybe he's not going to be the same 26 touchdowns. You got to assume that the Alabama offense takes a pretty decent step back with losing all that talent.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's Alabama. They're going to reload and keep on rocking.
Dude, I'm for the most part with you on this. Like, a lot of people want to try to draft Chase McClellan. A lot of people want to try to draft Trey Sanders is coming off of what 1-2 ACL injuries. That's a lot to come back from right there. He's not going to hand him off to that. But even so, Brian Robinson still at the end of the day is going to be your safest pick for that Alabama running back room. Now, Mitch Hart did I can't remember the stat he gave me when we were doing the Summa Cum Laude draft. He was talking about how I remember it's I think Brian Robinson had never gone over 10 yards or had never had a carry above 10 yards or something like that. And he's like, there's no way Saban's going to hand off the keys to his running back empire to a guy like that. I can't remember the stat off the top of my head. Mitch, if you're ever listening, please tell me that stat again, because it was a good stat. It was enough to get me to fade Brian Robinson just a little bit. But again, I feel like the risk with Brian Robinson is already in his ADP. It's baked in already. If Brian Robinson was the clear number 1 back at Bama going into this year, he would be a top 3 round back going off the board.
At least 3 rounds.
And
I don't know. I'm looking at Fantrax here, and I've got 10 attempts for 69 yards with a long of 21. I got 11 attempts for 62 with a long of 11. So
I can't remember.
I can't get some, Mitch.
No. That's more on me. I probably misremembered the stat.
He was bagging on my Austin Jones pick last week, so I got to give it back to him a little bit.
Also, Brandon Champion asked us in the chat real quick. We can answer this one real quick. He said, how do we feel about Kenneth Walker, Michigan State, as a late round running back?
Late round, I'm all for it.
Oh, yeah.
I've got no problem late round. Just for the simple fact is, me and you were talking before it started, at least I think it was. He's an upside pick. He's a guy that you can take and you hope that he just blows up. But if he doesn't, so what? Just cut him and throw him back out to the player pool and pick up this week's, big pickup. But Kenneth Walker, it's just the Michigan State offense as a whole is just, you don't want no part of it. I don't want to touch any part of it, but if I'm going to, it's going to be a late round. It's going to be Kenneth Walker, and I'm going to see what comes from it.
I could not have said it better myself. Also, we got some tight ends going off the board here. Now that Cole Turner went off the board, which is, again, if this is a situation that ever happens, Iowa dude looks like a genius right now because he did grab the best tight end in this upcoming class, and he grabbed it right at the same. Started. He grabbed it right when the run started. See, this is when I was talking to Colin Decker last week. Colin Decker grabbed Cole Turner. I know you're a fan of like paying too high for Cole Turner and everything, but like even Colin kind of admitted he's like, I felt like an idiot for grabbing Cole Turner 2 rounds ahead of when the next tight end went off the board. I felt like if I had started a run there, I would have looked like a genius.
But here's my thought process on that. Now, instead of him having to feel like an idiot, he should say, I don't have to worry about tight end all year long. I'm done with the tight end. Outside of an injury, I don't have to worry about looking at tight ends at all because I've got the number 1 wide receiver for a team that chucks the ball over the field in Cole Turner. He just happens to play.
I'm not sure about that, but even so.
Nah, we'll see.
We'll see.
He'll be the guy. And
see,
if you can lock in 6-7 receptions every single week for a tight end, you're gold.
I mean, you're right, but like my problem is I don't think he's the only guy like that this year. I think you're looking at like Greg Dulcich, Jalen Weidermeyer, is like Charlie Kolar. Even though he's not the sexiest pick in the world, I do think Charlie Kolar is is one of these top tier tight ends. And to me, like Cole Turner probably is a little bit more explosive, probably gets a reception or 2 more than them. But I'm willing to wait 2 or 3 rounds and grab a better running back, grab a better wide receiver in this range. And grab one of those guys a couple rounds later. That's just how I am.
And that's fine. And I totally understand.
God damn it, Willie Cunningham went off the board.
Oh, that was fun. I thought we was keeping it PG-13, Jared. Come on, man.
Oh, well, no. God damn, it's PG-13. Oh, Lord. I might need to start looking at tight ends here. Actually, you know what? Maybe not. Let's see what I got. There's one guy here. I'm kind of surprised that some other guys are going ahead of him. And I'm looking at some of the other guys. Yeah, running back, there's some good value here in the 9th round, I think, for running back, if you're ever feeling a little squeeze there. Xavier grabbed Jermaine Burton.
There's a lot of guys. If I were to start with a 0 running back approach, I would be comfortable with doing that. There's a lot of guys later in the draft that has some pretty serious receiving upside.
So there's one I'm looking at here. I hope you don't take him from me.
Oh my goodness! Tell Xavier to go back to dinner.
No, I'm with him. I do think Jermaine Burton will be a 1,000-yard receiver this upcoming year. I really do.
Well, I'm glad you guys think that. I will let you guys trust me. In any draft you guys are in with me, you will not have to worry about me taking your guys from Georgia.
That's fine. That's fine. But I'm telling people right now, like if you're like me, you're high on Georgia's offense this upcoming year and everything. Don't draft anybody but Jermaine Burton and maybe Darnell Washington. Those are going to be okay. I'll explain this a little bit more. I've been reading a lot of kind of insider stuff going on here. All right, so tight end run started a little earlier, and if this guy's still on the board, I'm probably going to go ahead and take him. Yeah, he's still there. I'm going to take Sean Dykes. Kind of a very big surprise from last year. To me, he's going to be one of these top 5 tight ends. Like you were talking about, like there's every year there's 4 or 5 tight ends. I don't think Sean Dykes exits outside of those top 5 tight ends. So the fact that he's still here for me, I'm very surprised. I just went ahead and took him, and then I'll grab a value at running back or wide receiver, whoever comes back to me here.
And I'm going to go ahead and take my next wide receiver here.
Okay.
Kind of kicking the tires on a couple guys. Dante Wright was one that I was considering. I have a hard time with Dante Wright. Now, for the little that he was able to play, the kid played great. I mean, he played in 3 games, 10 for 146, 5 for 109, 5 for 60. He gets some rushing attempts. I think, well, I'm going to go ahead and take Dante Wright since I'm talking about him and then follow back up with the next wide receiver that I was thinking about going with. And I can see why people are off on Dante Wright, no doubt about it. Just because
I personally am.
Yeah, he's a run-first head coach. Bailey's coming into town. You would assume that that's the focal point of the offense. But, he's just an explosive guy. If I'm going to take a guy in this range that, you know, may not see the volume, he damn sure be able to break a big one, right? Mm-hmm. So his average, his yards per reception for the games that he was able to play last year was 14, 21, and 12. So he does have you know, game breaking ability out there. It's just whether or not they're going to give him the ball enough to do it. Mm-hmm. And I could understand them not doing that, and I could have just let that pick on fire. But then again, I told you, you know, earlier on that I'm a shoot for the moon type of guy when it comes to drafts. So I will take the upside and then, you know, adjust accordingly afterwards if I need to. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to take your boy Johans here. Excuse me. That was the other wide receiver I was debating on.
I do like Johans as a catch-up, as Mike likes to talk about.
Yeah, right. Catch-up. That's right. That's for sure. All right, what you thinking right here?
So, top guy on my board, you're talking about some of these receiving backs and everything, and Britton Brown. Yeah. Dude should be flying up draft boards right now. Stuff coming out of camps talking about him basically taking over that Demetric Felton role. And if you, again, Demetric Felton only played in a couple games last year, but again, him and Greg Dulcich were the entire receiving game, along with Kyle Phillips, even a little bit. But the fact that Kyle Phillips was basically feeling like the third receiving option on that team should tell you a lot about how this offense is running.
Kyle Phillips is going to be good for 65 yards, and you hope he scores. Mm-hmm. You got to hope he scores because he's going to give you a nice PPR floor. But if he doesn't score, it's going to be a bad week. Mm-hmm. Also, real quick, I want to finish my thought on the Georgia wide receiver Georgia wide receiver. Go ahead.
Again, assuming you were with me and you think the Georgia offense is going to be good, there are three receivers on Georgia, or three receiving options on Georgia that you should be willing to draft. Nobody else. Jermaine Burton, Kyrus Jackson, Darnell Washington. Everything I have read has said that those will be the three mainstays on the field for that Georgia passing game. Everybody else is going to be rotating in and out. Do not draft Eric Gilbert in redraft this year. Do not draft Marcus.
Say it louder.
Marcus Rosemy-Jackson. Do not draft Justin Robinson in redraft this year. Those are going to be guys who are going to be coming on and off the field. Jackson, Burton, and Washington will be the guys you will want if you want the guys who have every chance to get receptions. So
yeah, so for the folks out there, especially that are, you know, drinking the Eric Gilbert's, you know, transition to wide receiver Kool-Aid, I'm out, bro. I don't want any part of it.
I'm out too.
I don't want any part of it. I hope the guy can take care of whatever issues he's got it taken care of, because, you know, he was the highest rated tight end ever coming out of high school. Isn't that the?
I believe so. Yes.
It's if he's not the highest, he's definitely one of the. Mm-hmm. So the talent is there, at least by the people that we give the freedom to judge talent on. But it seems like he's got a lot of other stuff going on, and I'm good. I'm gonna pass. There's a guy right here that was taken earlier that my guy Justin Nottingham took, Sprague, Jaleel Billingsley. Very well could be the number 2 pass catching option.
I would agree with you.
Alabama's offense. You know, I like a late round flyer on guys like, you know, I can't pronounce his first name, not even going to try, but Hall, the freshman coming in. I like taking late round flyers on guys like that, you know, just in case they break out. But, you know, having a big tight end like that can be a go-to guy for Bryce Young, you know, especially a young quarterback. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that's a home run pick right there, especially in the 10th round. That's somebody that I would imagine shoots up draft boards pretty quick.
I would definitely agree with you there. Especially, like, I think the thing that kind of put people off was that they didn't see him get a lot of work in the spring game. Yeah, and I think people were kind of hoping to see a little bit more there. Yeah, I would agree with you. He very much could be the best option, or he could very well be the second option at Bama, especially with everybody else kind of divvying up those targets. I think you will see Mechie and Billingsley will be the mainstays. Just like I was talking about just a second ago with the Georgia offense and everything. You need to go for the guys who are going to be on the field all the time. Yeah. You don't want guys who are going to be getting taken off the field on every third down because, you know, Saban or Kirby or whatever coach you're looking at doesn't quite trust them to run every single play.
Jaylen Mitchell's another guy that I got to do a better job of keeping my eye on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a big guy, 5'10", 220. They really started feeding him the rock toward the end of the season. You know, he finished the season off with 20 carries for 168 yards. And, you know, if he steps in for the Javian Hawkins role and sees that RB1 workload, you know, Hawkins was great. Hawkins was a great add to a lot of teams, especially his freshman year when he really come out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Max Duggan.
All
right, so what are you thinking on your next pick coming up here? What do you need? What are your thoughts? What's your kind of thought
So
process?
I like to grab wide receiver here, and actually there's one. Oh no, I don't want to say it. He's gonna be gone. He's gonna be gone. He will be sniped on me, but it's one pick. Please, there's no way this man should be here. There's no way this man should be here. And what are we in the 11th round? This man should have gone off the board a couple of rounds ago. And honestly, I'm kind of a dummy for not even thinking about this man earlier, because this would be a hell of a stack if I could get it. God bless America. I'm taking Deshaun Polk. Deshaun Polk, pairing him up with Dustin Crum, I'll take it all day long.
Yeah, that's a solid pick there, because that's going to give you a nice base, a nice floor. You know, every single week you're going to get a guaranteed floor out of those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
So right here for me, I'm looking to round out, you know, starting to round out my bench and get my upside picks. I'm sitting here in the 11th round. This has been a staple for my teams so far this year. Is Jo'quavious Marks for
I agree.
For
he goes too
State.
low.
It's just pass catching. That's it. I don't expect him to do a ton in the rushing game. Anything that you get in the rushing game is just icing on the cake. But if you're playing in a half PPR, or most specifically a full PPR league, this guy has, if you look back at over all of Mike Leach's running backs, all the way back to Texas Tech, his early days, you know, there were a lot of years where he had running backs close to 100 catches. I mean, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can get anywhere in that 70-plus catch range, which last year, what did he have? He had 60 receptions last year, as you know, once Kylan Hill stepped out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can get anywhere in that 75, 80 catch range, and he can give me 500-600 rushing yards, I'm tickled to death. You know, I
agree.
Totally fine with that guy, and it's a really good flex guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as that's his role, as long as his role is the pass catching back at the very least, you're probably going to get 7 or 8 catches every single week.
I would agree again.
And then I'm going to take my last running back here.
You're cutting off running backs here already. Oh, you kind of hit him early.
Yeah, So for me, the way that I like to draft is I want to load up on guys, especially the running back position, that I feel confident in with volume or upside. And then I'll see about the wide receivers who kind of break out in those first couple weeks. Those first 2 or 3 weeks, I've got my drafted guys that I feel good about. I've got Olave, I've got Wally, I've got Dante Wright. Those guys should be able to get me through until people start breaking out. Mm-hmm. And then I can make cuts and move on from that however I need to.
So I'm patting myself on the back here because I just grabbed Phil Jurkovich here in the 12th round, which easily one of the best values in the mid rounds you can get. But on top of that, Dustin Crum faces Iowa, Texas A&M, and Maryland, I believe, in the first 3 weeks. And not a lot of people expect him to be very successful in those weeks. Thus, you're going to be seeing him on the bench for those first 3 weeks. Let me tell you Phil Jurkovich's schedule at Boston College the first 3 weeks. Colgate, UMass, Temple.
Yeah, it's about as good as the first 3 weeks you're going to get, especially for a guy with Zay Flowers on the outside that he can throw the ball to.
Yeah,
that's solid, man. That's if you draft Dustin Crum, you have to do this.
You have
to go after somebody in that later rounds for the easy first 3 weeks.
I will tell people three quarterbacks I aim for when I draft Dustin Crum as the guy beating the drum Crum, or the God dang it, the Crum drum, as the guy beating the Crum drum. I look for quarterbacks who do have these easy 3 weeks, and there's 3 guys I'm looking at. 1, Phil Jurkovich. 2, Malik Cunningham. Let me tell you Louisville's football schedule here, if I can pull this up real quick. Louisville, Ole Miss, Eastern Kentucky, UCF.
Man, that Ole Miss game's going to be fun.
Dude, that's going to be so much fun.
There'll be 100 points scored in that bad boy.
And then the third, little bit riskier option, I'll fully admit, because, again, a lot of people don't believe he's locked up the starting job yet. But Tanner Mordecai, SMU.
Oh, yeah, man, I'm all in on Tanner Mordecai.
You got ACU, North Texas, LA Tech.
Yeah, no, Tanner Mordecai kept well, whether or not we want to believe he did or didn't keep the race close whenever Kyler Murray was in town, whenever Jalen Hurts in town, that's everything. That's everything that Lincoln Riley talked about. Now, maybe that's just coach speak. Maybe it's not. And if it's not coach speak and he's going to SMU, this guy's going to kill at SMU. He's going to have a great season. I have no problem with Tanner Mordecai later on. I don't think it's that much of a risky pick because of –
I said a little bit more risky.
Play. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little more risky compared to other guys. No doubt about it, because you just don't know how he's going to fit in that offense and how things are going to go. But it's I'd have no problem with that. I know me and JD on our show, we've talked about Tanner Mordecai a couple different times as some late round guys that are that could just explode.
This is just something in general I think people need to understand more now that we're entering the age truly of the transfer portal, is that coaches are not going to be naming these guys starters in spring practice. Yep. They're not. You know why? Because they're going to see 2 or 3 of their guys on their depth chart immediately transfer out because they're going off for greener pastures. Yeah. So you're going to see guys like Tanner Mordecai, who probably has the job locked up, in the coach's mind, not be told you're the starter yet. Grant Gunnell, I think, is another example at Memphis. A lot of people kind of freaking out that, how has he not locked up this job yet? I'm sure he has. He was a starter at a Power 5 program. Yeah. All right? Dude, and he showed out as much as he could at Arizona. Dude's proven. Anytime
you're linked with Kevin Sumlin, when Cliff Kingsbury isn't on the sideline with you, you set yourself up for failure already.
Well, that's why he transferred out and everything. He got the hell out of Dodge and he went over to Memphis, where he saw Brady White put up almost 3,500 yards last year. And he played with Calvin Austin and James Ivory. By the way, James Ivory is by far one of my favorite late round picks right now. I love grabbing Javon Ivory, not James Ivory, Javon Ivory.
I was lost there for a second, man. You lost me.
No, Javon Ivory.
I'm back now, though. I'm back now.
Especially if he kind of takes over that role that Taj Washington was kind of filling there at the end last year, where he's kind of breaking out behind Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin taking all the attention. Javon Ivory can hit him underneath. I love what he can do this upcoming year. See some guys going off here. Well, Johnny Football just took Tanner Mordecai. He went off the board. Xavier took Jordan Whittington. I honestly, if you're going to bet on a Texas wide receiver, I think Jordan Whittington's the way to go. You're the Texas guy. Any other guys that you are feeling like could possibly break out this year? You Joshua Moore guy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, to be totally honest with you, I'm not really a Texas guy. And when it comes to fantasy, I have a hard time both putting my fantasy team and my loyalties together. I feel you. As a Texas fan, I've been let down for the past decade. It's been pretty tough, especially whenever guys, like Sam Ehlinger there was the best quarterback we've had since Colt McCoy. We just completely and totally waste him with not being able to put a defense that could stop somebody trying to fight out of a wet paper bag. It was pretty disheartening. Now Jordan Whittington is, to me, going to be using that same Devonta Smith role, real close to the line of scrimmage, real short depth of target, get the ball in his hands and let him move. That's why I think Jake Smith would have been such a good fit at Texas with this offense. And I was really confused as to why he transferred out. And I really probably should look into it a little bit more and find out why, because I thought with Jordan Whittington and Jake Smith there, it was going to be nice. But outside of Jordan Whittington, it would be Troy O'Meary. You're just hoping that he's healthy and he can come back ready to rock and roll. But there's not a ton of dudes that I'm willing to put my faith in on the Texas offense just yet until I see it. Just because me being a fan and loving my Longhorns as much as I do, I've been let down quite a bit. So I'm not going to burn my fantasy money as on top of my gambling money every weekend. So
no, I feel you on that.
I'll keep it in my pocket.
I asked you. Am I up already? Dadgum, look at that.
You are back up.
All right, so we're gonna looky here. Let's see what kind of value can we get here. All right, one of my guys, Charleston Rambo, is still on the board. I'm heavily considering him here, but there's some pretty freaking good value at running back here that I feel like I could scoop up here. Looking ahead, let's see what kind of wide receivers do I have left on board. Yeah, I see a lot more guys that seem more swing for the fences kind of guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab probably one of my guys this year. I love Charleston Rambo. I love the move to Miami. I think he'll be probably the best, most consistent wide receiver they'll have had for this upcoming year. Dude had a ton of talent. He just got beaten out at Oklahoma. Because it's not a shame to me if you get beaten out at Oklahoma.
No, man, the whole wide receiver room is packed.
So I think he could easily be the best wide receiver Miami's had, regardless of who's under center, whether it's Jake Garcia, whether it's Dyke, or whether it's Derek King. I definitely I just like where the value I'm getting him at here. So where are you going at here?
So right here, I'm going to go with Wan'Dale Robinson, just for the simple fact that Kentucky's another one of those teams that I really try to avoid. I don't like having players from Kentucky. I don't like having players, from Washington over the past several years. It's just the offenses have been just nothing, right? But you're bringing in a new system. Wan'Dale Robinson transfers in. He was the only bright spot that Nebraska had over the past couple of years. So I'm cool with Robinson right there. I didn't put this guy in my queue, but I am going to take at least a slice of the Oklahoma offense. And maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't. But like I've said several times, you're in these late teen rounds. I am shooting for the moon and just hoping to hit something.
I'll give you my thought on that here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and pick up one of my guys here. Honestly, I'm looking at running back. I saw some value here at running back. There's still a couple guys on the board here, but I'm probably going to go Destin Coates here. I just want a piece of that Georgia State offense. There's one of those pieces is going to be showing out every single week, whether it's going to be Quad Johnson, whether it's going to be Sam Pinckney and Destin Coates. Roger Carter, I think, is going to be one of the more underrated tight end values this upcoming year. So I think that Georgia State offense is going to be worth investing into, especially since the Sun Belt Conference is pretty defensively challenged. So regardless of that, back to the Oklahoma wide receiver room, I just want to point out, you grab Theo Wiese, a guy who very likely is the number 2 wide receiver at Oklahoma this year, after Mike Woods, after Mario Williams. You grabbed him as the 4th Oklahoma wide receiver off the board, and I think you probably got the best value easily out of all those 4 guys.
And that's the thing, man. I mean, you can make a case for a lot of these other guys that they could be the number 2 guy. They could be. I mean, hell, at the end of the day, Marvin Mims, even as good as he was only on the field 20% of the time. He just happened to blow up while he was out there. I mean, to me, if Marvin Mims was kicking ass the way that he was kicking ass, he should have been on the field every play. He should be out there all the time. There had to have been a reason why he wasn't out there. So to me, the Oklahoma wide receiver room is the hardest one for me to project. I have a hard time with it. I've taken some shares of Marvin. Did you see
CFF Nate's or Nate Marquise's projections for them?
That's when it comes to Oklahoma, he is the first Twitter page that I go to, and that is the exact reason, because that's why I forgot to put him in my queue, and I was sitting there thinking, who's some offenses that I'm a fan of, who's some offenses that I expect to score a ton of points. This late in the draft, I'm not gonna load up on a team that I think is gonna average 14 points a game. I'm gonna load up on pieces from teams that I think are gonna average 45 points a game.
Fair.
And that's Oklahoma. If I'm gonna shoot, again, I know I'm beating this drum, but if I'm shooting for the moon, I'm not gonna shoot for the moon with a team that's gonna score 20 points a game. My probability of having a guy that's going to score that week goes down so much if you got a guy that just can't score touchdowns. So, you go Theo Wiese, you can go Mike Woods, you can go any of these guys, and, Jaden Hazelwood, all those guys, any of them can break out. Any of them has got –
I think it's pretty consensus that Hazelwood has probably seen his peak at Oklahoma.
That's so weird. He was so good coming out of high school, and you thought he was going to be the next big thing.
Man, ACL tears, they really can get you sometimes. Trust me, again, Dominic Blaylock at Georgia, again, I'm a Georgia guy and everything, but dude was a borderline 5-star wide receiver. Everybody's talking about Pickens, but Blaylock was right there behind him. But everybody's completely forgotten about him because he's had 2 ACL tears in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And it just hurt him so much. He's likely not even hardly to see the field this year, even though he's healthy, because they just don't want him to get hurt again. Real quick, going back a little bit, I missed this question. So sorry, Todd, if you're still in the audience, my apologies. He asked, he took Marks in a C2C draft recently, Jaquavius Marks. You're the big Jaquavius Marks guy, Kevin.
Yeah.
Do you see any potential in him having a role in the NFL? Do you see him having a...
Man, that's a great question. And what'd you say his name was, Mark?
Todd.
Todd. So, Todd, I'm probably not the best guy to ask questions when it comes to NFL scouting, when it comes to that kind of stuff. I don't really dabble in the Devy C2C arena too much. I would really like to, and I've talked to a bunch of the C2C guys. I listen to their show every week, just trying to get a grasp on their thought process compared to my thought process when it comes to CFF compared to C2C. So I'm not the greatest to answer. Obviously all the guys at the Campus to Canton website, all those guys, Matt Bruning, Felix Sharp, all those guys would probably be the first place that I would go to ask that question. And because if I answer it, I'm just going to be talking out the side of my neck, and I'm going to sound very uninformed, and I do not like sounding like that. So no, I'm respectfully going to defer that question to some guys that have a little bit more knowledge when it comes to scouting for the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you, Kevin. I'm not the biggest expert in the world. If I had to take a shot at it, I would say probably not, because I can't think of any Leach running backs that were truly successful at the next level. Now maybe the game's moving towards them because receiving backs are becoming more and more a commodity at the NFL level.
Yeah.
But as far as if I just had to throw a dart right now, I'd say probably would be a depth piece at best on an NFL roster.
Yeah, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially the late round podcast, that kind of stuff. And I know that there are statistics that would say that Jaquavius Marks is not going to be an NFL type of running back just by his size. He's 5'10", 195 pounds. It's 210 pounds is really the mark. Most running backs below that mark, I know that there's plenty of data to suggest that those guys don't hit near as often as the guys over that 210 mark. Size, you got guys that are way smarter than me, way more willing to dig down deep into that kind of stuff. And I'm glad they are, so I can listen to their show and get that information. I don't have to do it myself. So I would say not, and probability says no. Like probability says no for every single one of these running backs. It's just the guys that's, like the Jamir Gibbs. That's why he is so well liked, is he projects to be a really good NFL running back. He's a big guy. He can catch the ball. He's got all the tools, right? And so probability will say that guy will probably at least have the opportunity to hit wherever he goes.
No, I think you explained it perfectly well. I'm curious. Oh, he went in the 9th round. I'm dumb. I'm looking for a player that went 3 or 6 rounds ago. God dang.
Who was you looking for?
I was looking for Max Johnson. See if he was still on the board. Because I think, again, typically in a 16-round draft like this, I'm not going to take a 4th quarterback. But you know what? I thought him being there would be good enough for me to warrant a dart throw there. Because again, you nail that LSU quarterback battle, you got one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in the upcoming year, in my opinion. You got plenty of talented receivers. I'm about to pick. So let's see what we got here. You got 2 rounds left. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at DSTs. I do like sometimes grabbing a DST in the 15th round. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the Coastal Carolina defense. They got a soft as hell schedule this upcoming year. And I'm going to do the same thing here and go with Notre Dame. And I got to tell you, they're the other one I was looking at.
I wanted to tell you guys this last week. You guys put a shitload of pressure on me for that last pick of who is Kevin going to take. There's only one good defense left out there. I'm interested to see if he's going to take him. And I was like, oh man, am I missing somebody? It really made me really slow down and like, oh shit, I don't want to miss nobody. I got to make sure that that I don't blow this pick, because then I'll get bagged on this show. I don't want to do that.
I do want to point out that in this draft, Iowa dude has picked up both Max Johnson and Miles Brennan.
Well, that's the way you have to do it.
You have to do it.
If you're going to do it, you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Because let me rephrase that. If you're going to do it, you should do it this way. Especially since you're picking both those guys up so late in draft. Same with Case.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Casey Thompson and Hudson Card. If I had 2 picks left, then I could stack those 2 guys together and go that route. So I'm going to go with the tight end position here. Going to go with Cade Otton, just for the simple fact that I can't think of any wide receivers at all that I'm interested in having on the Washington offense.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go with their tight end. We'll see how it works out.
Like I know CFF guys are really looking at McMillan, I think his name is. Jaylen McMillan. Kind of a young guy, 4-star wide receiver. This is I'm looking at the players here, just utter dart throws as far as the eye can see. Yeah. Probably the safest value I'm looking at here is just Jaylen Smith, a guy who I've been looking at the past couple of rounds. Dude had some very explosive games, that Missouri game especially last year. Really kind of showed that if he can take off, he can really take off in this offense. Now, I heard a lot about, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but a lot of people talking about how Traylen's the Lightning, and this other guy, I can't remember his name, is the Thunder. But even so, like, Jaylen Smith took over for Rakeem Boyd after last year. I've seen a lot of Arkansas fans talk about how he was such a godsend because Rakeem Boyd disappointed epically.
Yeah.
So hopefully Jaylen Smith continues that success going to this year. Round 16 pick, utter dart, or not utter dart throw, but like these are guys that I'm willing to cut if they're not showing out by week 1 or 2.
Yeah, I start making picks on guys that I'm willing to cut at like round 10. that's really where my thought process goes, dude. I know I said this off there. I am overly active on the waiver wire, probably more than I probably should be. You know, there are very few players left on my team that I draft in every single league that I play in, whether it be NFL, whether it be college. You know, I make a lot of moves. I try to make a lot of trades. I'm always very active with stuff. So I'm always trying to wheel and deal. You know, if I'm looking at this team right here, and if I were to have 5 players on it once the season was over, I'd be pretty surprised. You know, the 5 guys.
If you have the same team that you drafted at the beginning of the year, you did it wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, and if you have 2 players left on your team that you drafted, you probably did that wrong too. You know, let's be clear here. It's, you know, the draft isn't the only way to win. You know, it's probably a third of the season. You got a third with the draft, you got a third with the waiver wire moves, and you got a third of luck of just making sure players don't get injured.
You're right.
All right. There you go. All right. So who do you got on your team, Jared? Let's go through your team real quick.
Give me 1 second to just finish typing up something. And all right, we'll go take a look at my team here real quick. So I started off the draft. Do we want to go round by round or just want to do position by position?
Just go position by position. That way we can kind of see who we got all together.
That is fine. That is fine with me. So quarterbacks, I got my 2 starting ones are Dustin Crum and Brennan Armstrong. Brennan Armstrong just provides such a safe floor for my quarterbacks and everything. I don't think I'll ever have like a bust week in terms of him getting below 20 points. Nothing worse than when you draft a guy in the first couple of rounds and all of a sudden in 1 week he just gets you like 14, 15 points and you're like, what the hell? Sam Howell. But even so, Dustin Crum, once he gets to that max schedule, he's probably going to be like, Dustin Crum is probably the only other quarterback I can think of this year outside of Malik Willis that could hit 1,000 yards rushing.
Yeah, which is exactly why I'm off on quarterbacks for the most part.
Yeah, so like again, to me, I'm glad to grab him, especially in that second round. Like I wasn't aiming for Dustin Crum tonight. Like I did not come into this draft being like, all right, Dustin Crum will be on my team. But again, if he's going to be there in the second round, yeah, I'll take him. Especially if I'm able to grab my third quarterback here, Phil Jerkovich, in the 12th round. I'm surprised Phil Jerkovich hasn't flown up draft boards. Like he was a mid-round guy like earlier this offseason. Like he was around like 8, 9. But like now I'm seeing him go in like the 12th round. I'm like, how is this guy falling? This guy should be rising.
It's just there's no rushing upside with him, and it really for fantasy players today, we're all getting smarter. We're all getting better at it. You know, we're not reaching near as much, that kind of stuff, and we've gotten to understand that if a quarterback can't run the ball, then you can get a bunch of quarterbacks that can't run the ball in the double-digit rounds. That's the
You're
whole
right.
philosophy around the late-round quarterback. If he can't give you any upside, or if he doesn't have Patrick Mahomes type of passing volume, then why spend an early round pick when you can get somebody later on? That's why Jerkovich is falling, and I get why you like him. I do too, just the same. It's just it makes sense to me why they fall, because they don't offer anything with their legs.
Oh, fair enough. All right, so running back here again. This was a position I was a little worried about halfway through the draft and everything, because again, grabbed my first one is Cameron Peoples. I like Cameron Peoples. I think he's gonna be great, but again, that App State running back room can be weird sometimes. Like everybody last year was talking about Marcus Williams being the next guy up at App State, and then all of a sudden it was Dacia Carrington, and then all of a sudden it was Cameron Peoples near the end of the year, and we're like, what the heck is going on here? So I never feel safe drafting an App State running back that high, but Cameron Peoples really did seem to kind of solidify everything at the end of last year, so I felt safe there. Xavier Invalide in the 6th round was a godsend. He should not have been there in the 6th.
That's a home run pick right there.
And then to stack it on top of that, Chris Smith, one of the biggest upside picks of this upcoming year. I like him a lot. Grabbing him as my flex, I felt pretty good about that. Britton Brown, I think, could easily be a top 24 back this upcoming year, especially with his receiving work. And then two kind of safe guys I would feel comfortable kind of plugging in if one of my guys were to go down, in Dustin Coates and Traylon Smith. I felt pretty good about those two guys. Wide receivers, I hit wide receiver early, one in the 1st round, one in the 3rd round, got Keyshawn Butte and Jalen Cropper. Felt pretty good about that. Waited till the 8th round to grab my 3rd wide receiver because the value to me was in the running backs around that 6, 7, 8 round range. So then I grabbed Quentin Johnson because he was kind of one of the last guys that I felt like was going to be a solid, like clear number 1 wide receiver on his team, not going to be really overshown by anybody this upcoming year. So I went ahead and grabbed him.
To get a guy that could see 10, 12 targets every single week, that late is great. I got to looking for him myself. I didn't realize he was gone, and I'd forgotten about him. And I got to looking around for him, and I realized that you picked him, and I thought, man, that's a really, really good pick that late at that spot in the draft.
Oh yeah, I felt very good about that. Deshaun Polk, I felt like I call Quentin Johnson like the last, to me, like this one of the last like solidified wide receiver ones in his team. Deshaun Polk has every opportunity to be the wide receiver 1 at Kent State. I'm a little worried about Nakeem Johnson. I've heard a lot of things about him and Dustin Crum setting up some good chemistry, so I'm worried that he might take away some of that role from Deshaun Polk. But even so, if Deshaun Polk does become the wide receiver 1, he's a fantastic value here as my wide receiver 4 on this team. And then Charleston Rambo, I've already kind of said my piece on him. I think he'll be the wide receiver 1 at Miami, but again, the risk is there. He could easily be the wide receiver 1. He could be the wide receiver 3 on that team any given week.
Sure.
So I felt pretty good about my wide receiver room. Tight end, grabbed Sean Dykes. I was kind of surprised. He was like the 7th, 8th tight end that went off the board. I felt like I got pretty good value on him there. In terms of tight ends that were still on the board, if I were to grab another one, Darnell Washington was on here. Trey McBride did not get drafted in this draft. I'm kind of surprised about that. Usually you see him go, so I probably would aim for him as well. And then DST, I went 1 round earlier than I usually do in the 16th, but like Coastal Carolina was there. I was like, you know what? If nobody else is going to take him, I'll take him. So overall, I feel pretty good about this draft. I'd say I don't want to give myself too much here, but
pat yourself on the back,
I would feel very good going into a year with this team. Again, I prefer deeper leagues, so like I would have a much deeper bench than this, hopefully. But I'd give myself an A- given the stuff we got going on here. Again, maybe too much patting myself on the back, but I felt pretty good about this. What do you think, Kevin?
I'll let you give the grades. I'm not a grade giver on that one. So for me, only took 2 quarterbacks. I'm never going to draft any backup quarterbacks in drafts. Just a simple fact. Again,
let me get your team up on the board. There you go.
Yeah, again, I'll be able to work on the waiver wire with guys that I'm dropping to pick up hopeful breakouts, that kind of stuff. So I got Dorian Thompson, Robinson, and Bailey Zapp.
I don't think you need to go outside of those guys.
And I'll have to plug in, bye weeks, that kind of stuff. But that's Dorian Thompson Robinson. You're going to have some rushing volume there to help you with the floor. Bailey Zappe is should be slinging the pill all over the field. So there's plenty of volume there. For the running back position, I drafted a lot of running backs. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think. 6.
You see the guy last week that drafted 7 running backs in the first 7 rounds? Or no, there was 6 running backs in the first 7 rounds.
I did. That's a little bit more extreme than I'm willing to go. I will say that's a little bit more than I'm willing to do. At running back, I got Tank Bigsby and Austin Jones in my starting spots. Something that we didn't hit on with Austin Jones is he caught a lot of balls last year. In the 6 games that they played, he caught 21 passes. Didn't score any touchdowns with him, but that gives you a nice safe for the first game of the year. The first game that they played, he had 7 catches for 48 yards, and that gave him a 15-point game. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but in comparative, when you look on his rushing side, when he had 9 carries for 9 yards, to the fact that you have 15 points when you had a sub 10-yard game says a whole bunch, right? So when it comes to the PPR world, that kind of stuff saves you. So as long as he can catch the ball, as long as he continues to catch the ball 3-4 times a game, I think he's going to be an absolute home run. At the flex spot, I got Jamir Gibbs. I got Brian Robinson Jr. from Alabama on the bench, Joquavius Marks, and Devontae Price for Florida International. We didn't talk much about him, but this cat right here dominated last year. I didn't realize this when I first started making my rankings and stuff like that, but he needs to be up a lot higher than where he's being drafted.
I would agree.
He had 5 games, played 5 games. 4 of the 5 was over 100 yards. 2 of those games were 148 and 2 and 178 and 1. And let's face it, those are all 5 losses. They went over last year, so they leaned on this guy the entire season, even when they were getting their asses beat, right? So
this is something I think people need to look more for. And there's another guy here I'm looking at who was undrafted here, and that was Terrian Stewart, Bowling Green, freshman running back at Bowling Green. Dude was being given the ball, even though they were getting their asses absolutely handed to them each and every game. Yeah. As far as I can tell, you need to be looking for these running backs that are game script proofed. No matter, like Muhammad Ibrahim, we were talking about him earlier in the show and everything. He is a guy. Doesn't matter if they're winning or losing. He is going to be given the ball because he's probably the best player they have on that team, and he's probably going to be the best chance they have to win that game.
He's going to get his 30 touches. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm liking Devontae Price, especially in the 12th round. I'm really, really pumped about being there because that guy could end up being a weekly starter for me. He could. If I were to roll this team out, and let's say Tank Bigsby doesn't hit. If you're looking at his game log, there was some games where he just disappeared on you. He started the season out pretty slow, didn't get onto the field, but then, he had 4 or 5 games where he had 15 plus carries. And then he disappears for 3 carries for 24 yards against Tennessee. Maybe that's an injury, maybe it's not. Alabama totally shuts him down. Texas A&M essentially shuts him down. He gives you no real help in the passing game. So Tank Bigsby, he's probably the riskiest running back that I feel like I have on my entire team.
Could be.
If he busts out and goes nowhere, then Devontae Price would be a fine substitution for him for the rest of the season.
I would agree with you 100%. One thing about Tank Bigsby I want to point out here, and again, this is more just a dig at Auburn than anything else, but I remember this game that they played Georgia. Tank Bigsby had 7 receptions for 68 yards. Which was 9.7 yards per catch. So he was doing very well.
Yep.
He had 4 receptions the rest of the year.
Yeah, I know.
It was the second game of the season. He had 7 receptions, and it's clearly you could use this man in the receiving game. 4 receptions.
That's because
the rest of the year, all in the very next game.
But Bo Nix is hot garbage.
I mean, Bo Nix is hot garbage, but honestly, that's on Gus Malzahn as well.
There's a reason why he's not a coach there anymore. He's not utilizing the players around him. So hopefully Brian Harsin get it fixed and get him going in the right direction. Wide receivers, I'm not near as confident in my wide receivers, just from a volume standpoint. Especially with Olave and Wright. Olave's a big play cat. Dante Wright's the same way. I got some decent volume with Jaden Walley, but then you go down at my bench and I got Tyler Tyler, excuse me. And then Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Wiese. Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Wiese, if they hit, then this team is going to look great. And if they don't, then I'm looking to pick people up off the waiver wire. But I'm pretty comfortable with my team. I picked up tight end Cade Otton out of Washington, and then Notre Dame's defense. If it were a real draft, I would have probably reached up and grabbed a defense a little bit earlier, just so I didn't. It would be the Clemson or the Alabama, and let's just see how that goes.
Could be.
But I'm a big proponent of streaming defenses anyway. I do quite a bit of homework every week on defenses to stream. Like I told you, in the leagues that I run, I make sure defenses score, and they score a lot. You know, Sprague, Justin Nottingham can attest to that because he's played in a couple with me. But I do a lot of streaming of defenses, so I'll pick a defense every draft. But you know, I'll pick whoever's left, and then just roll the rest. So I'm comfortable with the team. I'd be perfectly fine rolling this out there on the first Saturday of the year, and then of course making adjustments after that.
I definitely I think you did pretty well there. You're a big PPR guy, so like you're talking about these receivers, like a lot of them big play guys, but not a ton of volume and everything. Is that something you kind of feel a little icky about as a PPR guy?
And that's exactly why I said what I said there, is because, you know, if Olave's not going to give me a lot of 7, 8, 9, 10 catch kind of games, right? You know, he's you've got to hope he hits on the big one. You know, looking through his game log for last year, you know, he stayed right around that 5, 6, 7 range. He had a couple games where he was at 8, one game at 10, but for the most part, he was 6 for 104, 7 for 120, 5 for 64, 8 for 100, you know, 10 for 139, 6 for 132, and then 8 for 60. Olave's just fortunate enough to seem like the go-to target around the end zone. You know, he had a lot of 2 touchdown games, so that makes me feel a little bit better about it. But when it comes to guys like Dante Wright and those cats, yeah, I don't feel the greatest about that being on there because you're hoping for the big play. You know, and if you get it, then great. Then you get your week for that guy. But if you don't get it, he's going to disappear on you. So let's hope that Steve Adazio can realize that, hey, look, you know, I can't just run it 45 times a game. You know, I don't have A.J. Dillon anymore. So maybe I'm going to get this cat involved, and especially with him being able to touch the ball in the running game, you know, that gives me a little bit safer floor there. Could be.
Yeah, I think, again, your team is made up of a lot of guys that maybe I might fade a little bit more. Like, again, Jamir Gibbs, Bailey Zapp, I still have a little bit of, like, question marks on. Mostly because I'm just not entirely sure that offense translates in year one. But even so, I understand why people
that game log looks good in that division, in that D2, doesn't it?
I would say, yeah, you're right. Dante Wright's another guy that kind of faded a little bit, but like overall, like these are guys that you talking about them. These are guys that you're comfortable with and everything. So I think for you and everything, I think you did a great job drafting the guys that you wanted. You felt very comfortable with your team. I think you did. I think you did a great job.
Well, and we've talked about that too. You know, off air and into Twitter DMs and stuff like that. Is I'm not chasing the value. I never have, and I'm probably never going to. I'm going to draft the guys that I want on my team. For the simple fact is, if I get my ass kicked, and especially that first week is the worst. If I get my ass beat that first week, and all I did was chase ADP and say, oh, this guy shouldn't be here, so I'm drafting him. And then I got a guy that I do like on another team that I should have just went ahead and picked instead of that, and he blows up. Oh, dude, that is a sick feeling that I cannot get rid of, and it makes me hate that week of fantasy football, and it makes me so mad. So I've completely gotten away from chasing that. I use the ADP sheet to know where guys are going at. So if there's a guy that I want this guy on my team. If he's going in the 8th round, I'm picking him in the 6th round because I want him on my team, and I'm cool with overdrafting somebody to make sure that he's on my team, because there's no better feeling than that first week when that guy that you reach 2 rounds to get goes the hell off and wins you a week. Man, that trash talk session in the group chat is out of control.
Oh, I believe it.
I am pounding my chest. I am running around letting everybody know.
You are the king of trash talk. I've seen you go at people, man. I've seen you go at you and some guy the other day. Like I just kept getting notifications for you and some other guy going at each other because y'all were going back and forth in one of my comment sections, and I was just and I'm just sitting there, I'm reading through it the entire time. I'm just like, this man has no chill whatsoever.
And it's something that I truly enjoy doing. I don't mind being a little bit of a troll whenever it comes to talking a little trash, especially when it comes to college fantasy football, because it's something that I love.
Oh yeah,
this is by far my favorite hobby, and that's why I'm such a big proponent of people trying it out for the first time. Is I think there is no comparison from CFF to the NFL fantasy world. I think CFF is by far more superior because at the end of the day, if you can't put together a winning team, it's really your own fault. There's plenty of players out there. You just got to find them.
I would agree 100%.
So, me and I can't remember the guy's name. So, hopefully you're watching. Shout out. Georgia's offense is going to be terrible. I can't wait for the season roll out. So,
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. When we beat Clemson week 1, 48-45, it's going to be a good feeling.
Well, if it's 48-45, then I will absolutely say I am sorry. Now, with that being said, I am going ahead and picking Georgia as that week 1 upset. I do think they win that game outright, though.
All right, I appreciate the love there, Kevin. You don't give Georgia love very often.
I don't. But I think I think it's a perfect time for a new starting quarterback. Even though he played well last year with DJ Uiagalelei, hopefully I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right.
Uiagalelei.
Yeah, if it's not right, it's really damn close, and I'm going to stick to saying it just that way. So I think that's a nice – it's a big-time game for them to go into, especially with, how Georgia has recruited on defense over the past several years. I think it's going to be a hell of a game, and I don't think it'll be super high scoring, but I do think that Georgia is going to get that win.
I'm trying to remember what the over-under is on that game. I think it might be in the high 50s, if I remember correctly.
I was about to say, if I had to guess, it'd be 57.
I think it's in the mid to high 50s. So yeah, clearly people are expecting some points, but maybe not an offensive shootout like Ole Miss, Alabama, or something like that.
Yeah, be fun though.
Xavier asked us to rate his team. I'm going to take about 5 seconds here. You got an F, Xavier. Go home. I will say MMH here, he's got a full name. This is just his acronym and everything. He did ask us to kind of talk about his team a little bit here because it's his first time drafting the CFF league. And I'll go through it here real quick.
Ooh, yeah. Well, so, let's definitely talk about that. Bring that up.
Yep, I got it up right here. It's Team MMH. So he grabbed Mohamed Ibrahim, 5th pick. We talked about that earlier. You get him outside the 4th overall pick, you got to steal. Grabbed Ulysses Bentley. I'm a little skittish on Ulysses Bentley this upcoming year, but again, you grabbed him as your second guy. I think you did fine there. Wide receivers are Khalil Shakir, Jakiri Roberson, Drake London. Wow, okay.
There's a lot of volume there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, what was Shakir's target share last year? It had to have been up in the 40s, wasn't it?
Probably higher than that. I'd say. I remember looking at him. Once the Mount West games came back in, I'm just like, okay, Shakir getting 20 points a game. All right.
And then you got Jakiri Roberson, Drake London. Those are both offenses that throw the ball early often. They're fast paced. So those 3 wide receivers are great. Those 3 wide receivers matched up with Mohamed Ibrahim is
add in Braylon Sanders here at his flex. Like God.
I mean that's.
So yeah, the hell receiver room. And look at his running backs on his bench. He's got Lou Nichols. You got a MAC running back right there. Easily could Lou Nichols and Kobe Lewis could easily be the Javonte Williams and Michael Carter this upcoming year. Easily, especially once they get into that MAC schedule.
And
on top of that, you got
either one of those guys are one rolled ankle away from being a friggin' superstar this year.
You're right. You're 100% right. And then you got Frank Gore there. That's just a safe volume bet right there, especially with Jack Abraham leaving that offense right there. Tim Jones also leaving there. They're going to be running that ball a whole lot more, I think, this upcoming year. Plus just the name value. And then you got our guy Jaylen Mitchell and everything. Like he could easily be a league winner this upcoming year if he is able to keep that Louisville running back job all the way through the year. Absolutely could be a steal here in the 11th round. Quarterback Shavon Cordero. He's not a guy I typically aim for and everything. I just don't know enough about him for me to really want him on my team. If I'm being real.
He was a lot of fun for me watching other people that had Cole McDonald as their starting quarterback. I had him the year that he broke out, and he kept getting benched for Chevin Cordero, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
No.
And it really sucked to be an owner for that guy. Now, the following year, I didn't really invest too much in him because of that, and it was great watching everybody else's hair catch on fire every week because Cordero would step in for Cole McDonald, who just threw 3 interceptions in the first quarter, and then blow up the rest of the game. And then the next week, McDonald would be back starting, and they would just swap back and forth. If Cole McDonald can just not turn the ball over, I think he's going to be just fine. He's got a really reliable running back that's a great pass catcher, and I think his name's Calvin Turner.
Calvin Turner, yes, sir.
It's Calvin Turner, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so he's got a really reliable running back to dump the ball off to. So I don't mind Cordero at all. He's one of the guys that if I'm going to like super punt on quarterback that I'm looking at later rounds.
I think that's fair. Zamir White, again, I'm a Georgia guy, so I like Zeus. But again, here in the 13th round, one thing that shocked me in Xavier, again, we watched Georgia every single week during the season and everything, but like halfway through the season and everything, we were like, has Zeus had a game where he didn't score a touchdown? And it was like 7 weeks in, and lo and behold, he hadn't. He hadn't had a game where he hadn't scored a touchdown. We realized that Zeus became one of the safest floor options in fantasy, because you knew every single week he was going to probably get at least one touchdown, regardless of how many yards he got and everything. So yeah, you probably if you needed 10, 15 points to get you through the week, Zeus was your best bet right there. And to get him here in the 13th round, I think it's perfect. And then Danny Gray, I think he's great. If you don't believe in Reggie Roberson's health this upcoming year, grab Danny Gray. He'll easily take over after Reggie Roberson goes down if you're afraid of that.
Yeah, I have no problem with any of those players there. Those are guys that you're definitely looking because they're high upside guys. And, if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times just on this show. That's what I'm looking for. That's everything I'm looking for every week.
Yep, I think that's very fair. So, MMH, dude, great job, man. I think you did a great job for your first draft. Got some great value.
And MMH, if you want to join a full-time CFF league, shoot me a DM on Twitter. I'm opening up a second league that's kind of for the beginners in the industry kind of thing. Reach out to me. I'll add you to the league, and we'll play together this year. No,
I'll go ahead and just plug that in general here and everything. That's something I do want to see just among us experts this upcoming year. Just we need to start so many leagues where people, because CFF is growing this year. I can already see it. Just as we get closer and closer to this offseason, so many people want to try it out, but they're so afraid they're going to get into a league with a bunch of people who have been doing it for years, and they're going to get their ass kicked, and they're going to feel like it's not going to be very fun, especially with it already being so hard and having so many players to keep track of. We need to have leagues where people can hop in with people who haven't really played before, and they can all kind of dip their toes in, figure out what's going on and everything, and they don't feel like that if they make one mistake, they're screwed for the rest of the season. So Kevin, props to you for setting up those leagues and everything, man. I've been looking for ways to maybe start up some of those. I think that's again, call to action for every CFF expert out there or if you call yourself an expert, set up some leagues, bring some people in, have some people try it out. C2C people I know are open to it. NFL people I know are open to it, especially here in the South. College football is bigger than NFL down here. And the fact that CFF is as small as it is compared to NFL fantasy down here, it shocks me. It really does. So let's reach out to these people, y'all. Let's get this growing this year. It's a year of CFF as far as I'm concerned.
Let's do it. And also for everybody out there watching, make sure you guys tune into the fantasy the Graph Experts. I got lost. What's it called?
The Kings Classic?
The Fantasy Pro Expo. Yeah, the Kings Classic. Yeah, make sure you guys are tuning into that because it's, to my knowledge, it's going to be the first ever live broadcasted CFF draft. We got me and Jared will be there. We got a ton of other guys that are super sharp. We're really looking forward to it. This is it's a big moment for CFF in general. So
I agree.
Make sure you guys tune in for that. For anybody that's watching this, make sure you reach out to us and come introduce yourself. We'll grab a beer.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a great time. Like I'm so excited. I can't believe it's only a month away. It's less than a month away at this point. Yeah. It's gonna be.
Yeah, Jared and I just booked our tickets today.
Yep, I'm ready to go. Xavier and I got plans to visit the Football Hall of Fame while we're up there and everything. It's gonna be a good time. I'm trying to think of anything else I could kind of plug in here before we kind of finish up here. I did announce today on Twitter just a little something I wanted to play around with. I'm launching a series of conference-specific best ball leagues. $10 entry fee. First place wins $50. Second place wins your money back, and then everybody else, you get nothing. But even so, very low stakes leagues. You come in. I launched the SEC one today, so it'll be only SEC. It'll be 1 super flex spot, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 regular flex, and then 16 bench. We decided to go with the super flex because, again, when you have like 8 to 10 teams in the league, well, you run out of starting quarterbacks in the conference after a while. So we want to give some flexibility to maybe those who, maybe you want to punt on QB and you're just like, you know what, I'll grab a running back to start my team over everybody else. And we don't, because otherwise we'd be stuck down at like 6 teams per league and everything. And that's not exactly the most fun after week after week.
No, that's the perfect way to do it. Perfect way to do it. That way people have the roster flexibility, and that way you can throw in a little strategy when the draft, because if you're at the end of the first round and you go, Isaiah Spiller and Tank Bigsby, you have locked up the lion's share of the running backs.
Oh, yeah. Well, everybody else is fighting over the scraps of Connor Bazelak and Ken Seals at Vanderbilt and everything. You're sitting here riding high with Isaiah Spiller and Keishon Butte or something like that.
Yeah, that definitely throws in a little of the extra strategy into the draft set stuff. So that's definitely the right way to do it. The super flex and then the regular flex for sure.
Yeah. So again, that's just a little some fun that I started up. If you're interested in that, DM me. Both of our Twitter handles are down there at the bottom. I'm at CFF_Jared. Kevin is at K Hookem. I always imagine whenever I read that, it's like K Hookem.
So I got my shirt on right here just by happen chance.
There it is.
It's the OK Cool Hookem.
Yep.
Right. So
that's how I imagine it.
So whenever I first joined Twitter, that was the thing going on in the Texas world was the OK Hookem that Tom Herman sent the Coach Smith whenever they were leaking all those text messages and stuff there, and I have loved that saying ever since. So yeah, so that's why it looks the way that it does. That's the specific reason is the OK Cool Hookem.
I love it. It's how I read it every single time. So you nailed it. You nailed it. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Kevin. Man, this was fun. I was finally glad to get you on a show like this. And again, anybody else listening, if anybody else out there that wants to hop onto this show at one point, I would love to. I found this is just a great way for me to meet all of y'all before we even get to the Fantasy Expo, before we even do the Kings Classic and everything. I've had John on here. I had Colin Decker from C2C. Got Kevin on here now. It's very fun to kind of sit back, talk to you guys about this kind of stuff, and it's just a very relaxed setting. I feel like just kind of do a draft, kind of talk about it. Good time.
I definitely appreciate you having me, man, and looking forward to getting into the season with you and getting to play a little bit with you and see what you're all about in CFF. So I look forward to it. And again, I really appreciate you having me on tonight.
You're gonna have half of me because Xavier and I got to share a team, if you remember.
Yeah, that's right.
That's gonna be fun. All righty, thank you, Kevin. Thank you everybody out there for joining me. If y'all have if y'all like what you see here, or got any suggestions on how we do this kind of stuff in the future, please feel free to just DM me on Twitter, leave it down in the comments. Also, make sure you hit the like, subscribe button, all that stuff that I'm supposed to say as a YouTuber. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful night.
See you guys.